rude. Max was
Eh,
insufferable. I
it's a confrontational style to say the
It
least.
is. It is. It's not my style. I don't appreciate it. I'm not persuaded by it. I don't find it entertaining. I find it annoying.
I think it depends on the setting. On a comedy show, that's probably fine, but on a debate, it doesn't make you come off any better. I think.
I think it would work if he were funny. I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm gonna. I don't
No,
want to
it's
just.
fine. It's fine. It's fine. You can give your opinion. There's no
Yeah.
problem with that.
I.
Not
I.
at all.
I. It's not a kind opinion. I just. I found his teammate much more persuasive.
Uh huh.
Um, the Christian side I found to be almost entirely lacking. Um, if anything, I think the atheist side was more persuasive, but it was not in any respect due to the impact that Max had.
Mm-hmm. All right. And as far as the openings statements go, the Christian side started first, right? I'm going to have to rely on you for telling me what happened at the openings.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right. Isa, do you want to go first?
I mean, I can. They're the same talking points. I kind of went down the Christian rabbit hole, so I'm very well versed in evangelical Christianity. I know about the empty tomb. These women saw what was there, so thus it must be true. You know, lots of verified sources. Like I know all of the arguments, and it was pretty much all the arguments that I know for this position. Um, I'd like to hear something new and fresh, but maybe it's new and fresh for the audience. For me, it was just like, yeah, it's the same old arguments. I think, what is that guy's name? The forensic scientist or the police officer and he was in God's Not Dead too. What was his name? He was there, but it's that same kind of argument. Like we're going to forensically prove that this occurred. J. Warner Wallace, that's his name. J. Warner Wallace has this book that he wrote about the forensic scientists of this situation. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't, for me, religion, I don't need to be compelled by historical arguments. It doesn't matter to me. I think it's true if it's important for your spiritual practice, but in a lot of these debates, they try to argue historicity, and I'm like, okay, if that suits you. It doesn't work for me, but I get it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think at the end of the day, you can't have a. I think any kind of theological proof is going to be vacuous no matter what you do. Uh, I think that a theological belief comes by. I think people hold to theological beliefs because of life experience. And I don't think anyone seriously maintains a theological belief because they've been persuaded by rock solid logic of some kind of argument. Um,
mm-hmm.
I think every argument has a shortcoming, and I think that's true of atheists. I think it's true of theists. Um, I think that there's a number of people who have started without a theistic worldview and looked at certain arguments and became theists. I think the vast majority of people have started with a theistic worldview and looked at arguments and became theists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, became atheists. Um, but I think that's just a symptom of the fact that theism was much more prevalent than atheism for a very long time.
All right. Thank
So,
you very
yeah, I think, long story short, I didn't find the arguments that the Christians posed at the very beginning to be all that persuasive. It was just a lot more of that, like, philosophical arguments that just, maybe it holds water, maybe it doesn't, but it's not entirely persuasive.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And now for the atheist side opening, I'm going to ask you both. If you're in the audience and you want to jump on, remember I messed the hand up again. That stupid Max. Here in the top of the side chat, you can join us, and we'll be happy to hear you out. See what you are thinking in regards to the debate. So, Isa, what about the atheist side opening? I came in the open discussion, so I couldn't hear those.
Max, I've seen him. He was in the he came on the show before, right?
Yes, it's the same one. Yes.
Yeah. I think that was a little more compelling. I wasn't completely blown out of the water by either space, to be quite honest with you, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it was a little bit better. It's just I want to see something more fresh in general in these.
Yes.
We need to be fresh and bring new ideas and engage it from different angles instead of just using the same repeated arguments, and that just it's exhausting.
Yes.
Just to be very transparent, that's where I stand.
And we have Brenda hopping on the stage. How are you, Brenda? Thank you for being with us tonight.
Is my mic working?
Yes.
Mhm.
Great. I fixed that problem I had the other time.
Brenda, can I interrupt you really quickly? Max, am I super loud?
No, you're perfectly
Thank
fine.
you.
A little bit strong on the bass.
Yeah.
Kind of a little bit boomy, but otherwise okay.
It's my third testicle. I can't do anything about it.
I don't understand.
I can't control anything with my other than speaking more quietly. So
It's guy humor. I don't understand guy humor anymore. I lost those genes.
lovely.
So Isa gave his thoughts on the atheist side opening. What about you, Coffee
I
Bread?
want to apologize. I'm simply here because you're good guys, and I haven't been watching the modern day debate thing. I'm
No
just here.
problem.
I'm just here because you're decent. I was watching Danny actually. Sorry.
No problem. No, it's fine. You can hang out with us and we can talk about some stuff in the open discussion portion of the show. So you're fine to stay. Always welcome here. Coffee Breath, go ahead.
I missed it, so I didn't see the atheist in opening. My
Opening.
apologies.
All right. Nah, no problem.
I can expound a little bit more because I
yeah,
a little
go
bit.
ahead.
So Max kind of basically did kind of a refutation. He was going and refuting and saying, well, you're saying Christianity is wrong, but which version of Christianity? Like your stance is on one particular version of Christianity. So you can't really look at all of these kind of Christianities. And I think that's a fair engagement in general, is that when a lot of people debate this type of thing, they're debating from their point of view. And that's why it's always a kind of a complex space in general, is that you're trying to defend an entire and that's what I did when I was defending Islamic understanding. I said, look, I'm going to grant all of these different perspectives within Islam, and I tried to engage all these different points of view. A lot of these people just engage their version of their religion, their version of Christianity, their version of Judaism, their version of Hinduism, their version of Islam. Thus, you're not really going to get. You need to kind of have a more academic base. And I think that was a fair kind of call out, personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that gets tricky when talking about denominations and also even persons within the same denomination will have some differences in what they think. So it's always important to try and make sure that you understand. But in the open discussion, let's move on to that next. In the open discussion, I felt like something Isa said, that the same things that regularly come up in these kinds of debates came up, and it was. I want to be surprised. I want to, yeah, like you said, Isa, exactly like you. I want to hear something new, some kind of new take or new angle to some of these discussions, because so far in like, I don't know, the 10, 15 years that I've been actually talking about this stuff, it gets to a point where people think they're making an argument that you've never heard, and it's like, well, yeah, I've heard that many times. I still don't find the discussion from both sides.
You know what would be interesting if I were a Christian apologist and I was defending Christianity? I would say, let's examine Jesus and what he actually taught. And I would say, look at these teachings. They're extremely advanced. They are teaching you about, he came in a very hyper-conservative society that believed it was okay to stone people to death, right? I said, look at this transformative figure that said, I believe in compassion and love and understanding, and I will stand by that even if it kills me. I think that would be a lot more compelling. That you have this person, you have this hero that fought this heroic journey that brought peace, and he's so transformative that he inspired folks like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and had these civil rights campaigns against oppression. That he's a figure against oppression. I think that would be a lot more compelling, but I come from like an activist space, so that would be compelling to me personally, much more compelling than there's the empty tomb. Look at all the attestations of all the people who saw it, even though we don't, that's not even a true statement because we don't have independent sources of these people who saw it. And then we get into Josephus and the Tacitus and the elder, I don't know if Seneca was there, but there's multiple people that they say, and it's not really good evidence. And I'm like, but they're like, we're so sold that this is true. And I'm like, I'm not compelled by it. And I don't really care about that. I'm like, what about the experience? Argue for your experience, because that's what you know. That's a much stronger, compelling argument than, well, these generic arguments that I read from J. Warner Wallace. I'm going to throw those into the ring. I'm like, that's not compelling. And it's not unique. And it's not you. If you're trying to present yourself, that's not what's being presented. So
I do have a friend on the MDD Discord. He's a Christian, and he always has these interpretations that I've never heard of. He's really fun to talk to, because the other day he brought up some principle of quantum mechanics in our God discussion, and it's like, oh, nice, this is interesting. I have to figure out why it's wrong. Kind of like, how do I interpret this now that I know what he takes out of it? How, because I already, like, with these debates, you always go pre-convinced. There's not much, but the conversation is usually fun. And sometimes you hear stuff like this, like some interpretation of how some element of quantum mechanics proves God. And it's like, oh, wow, that's an amazing idea. That is interesting, at least to discuss. And I will probably keep on my point, but that is something I haven't heard, which is something I value a lot. Give us your thoughts on the open discussion that you saw, or the parts that you saw, Coffee Breath.
It takes me a second to collect my thoughts. I think
no problem.
that there was a legitimate attempt to have a discussion that kept getting interrupted, and it was super distracting to me. And I feel like I think that's the reason that I was so bothered by the approach that Max took, was because I felt like there was a really good discussion just in the wings that just kept getting shit on. And he was just throwing grenades on top of the discussion that would blow it up, and it couldn't happen. I like what you had to say, Isa, that there's nothing new when it comes to these discussions, and that I think that at the end of the day, the thing that I find to be most persuasive is my own personal experience. That's not something that I can transfer to anybody else. It's not something I want to try to transfer to anybody else. I think the reason that I am a Christian is because it's an authentic experience, and it's authentic to who I am. If I say I'm not a Christian, I feel like I'm not being authentic to who I am. I think that there is a ironclad philosophical explanation for atheistic worldview, for an atheistic worldview. I think that the atheist is standing on really good, strong grounds to say that there is no God. And I think that some Christians stand on an equally strong ground when they say, I believe in God. I don't think that the Christians that were there today stood on particularly strong ground. I felt like there was a little bit of a precept argument going on, which I don't think we got too deep into, which I'm happy for, because it's just that's just a useless argument. Yeah.
Oh,
My thoughts are all over the place on this one.
no, but it's fine. Let me ask you: do you think that the Christian side was lacking in like debate skills, or just the arguments?
Well, I think it was a little bit of both, maybe. I don't have any debate skills. I'm not going to critique them because they went out there and did something that I'm not willing to do, to put myself in that place. So props to them for being
definitely
more courageous than me. But I don't think that starting with what is the basis for your beliefs, what's the foundation for logic and reason, does anything. And I think that the other perception, the other side of the argument was the other Christian was largely the Bible says so, and leaving out. And I think he left out, like, I don't think he failed. I think he completely failed to realize that when he says the Bible says so, he means my interpretation of the Bible says so.
Yes, that is very interesting. Brenda, give us your thoughts on the whole Christian atheist debate.
I think that Christianity doesn't make any sense. I think that, but I'm not hardcore in that. There have been in the past new atheists who said things like that Christianity is delusional and irrational. I don't think it's irrational to have a religious belief. I don't think that I've changed my mind on that, actually.
Me too.
People have all kinds of beliefs that are inconsistent. I probably have beliefs that are inconsistent. I'm not perfect, although I'm getting there. Anyway, it's just the way I believe. Right. So it's as soon as you talk about beliefs, you're talking about yourself, and you're talking about yourself within a community. I'm out as being transgender. I was homeless, right? And I was on the streets, and that was really hard in Minneapolis. And I got into a place because of a church.
Right.
Churches funded shelters that I took advantage of. They funded. I lived in an apartments that was. It's a very progressive Presbyterian church. I mean, they do the whole thing where they would have gay marriages and things like that. So, in some people's lights, that's not Christian, but they are Christian. They're motivated by serving other people, and I'm very aware of, very appreciative of people who are motivated by their religious beliefs to help other people, because I have been helped by those people. But and so when I interact with those people, and I do, I'm not the typical internet atheist. I'm not in their face about their belief. It's sort of like when I come to the internet, when I come to these forums, this is an area where we can debate these issues, but outside of this area, right, we're just people and we just interact as people. But when I'm in this area, I say, it doesn't make sense what you are telling me. It doesn't make sense to me. And I have a different set of beliefs than you, right? Like also, there's two places. There's the convenience store that's literally half a block from me. Mostly, I think they're Persian. I'm not really sure. Probably from Iraq originally, right? They speak Arabic. Then literally across the street from me, there's a gas station with, and I'm dumb. I'm also in a what do they call that? Nutritionally poor area, right? I have to take a bus to go to get fresh vegetables, basically.
Uh-huh.
Right. So, and I go to talk, those guys that's the gas station convenience place. They have stuff, I get milk and eggs and pop and chips and stuff from them. They have that stuff. And I get stuff from them. Those guys are Ethiopian, I think. Right. So I'm surrounded by people that are different ethnicities, different religions. I'm not in conflict with all those people because I'm an atheist. I live in the community of people. Right. So I'm not, and all those people know who I am, and we're all fine with each other. Right. I'm just not fine with the junkies. Those are the people I'm not fine with. Those exist too. Those exist too. Yeah. I'm not okay with that because that's harmful. But this is a long way of me answering your question.
No, it's fine. No worry about it.
It's all very complicated because we are people, we live in a community, we have relations with other people, we have obligations and duties to those other people, and how those people treat you affects how you perceive them. So these people that I've interacted with for years in my local area are people that I respect and would never treat disrespectfully. But then when I come on here, sometimes well, I try not to be disrespectful, but I am aggressive. And I want to argue for my best case because I think of this as like a place where you can do that, where you can have those kinds of conversations. And also some of those people are not nice to me. They have not historically not nice to me at all. So I have no compunction against being rude back to them. So that's kind of where and also I'm 66 years old. I'm on Social Security now. And, I worked a full-time job my life. And now I get to have fun and I get to pursue intellectual pursuits that interest me. And it interests me to talk about philosophy, to talk about qualia, right? To talk about theory of mind, to talk about religious topics like this, and to have discussions and debates with people, and also to talk to people who I think are very wrong, like flat earthers and creationists, and people who are antivirus, and those people do, I think, real damage to the largest, antivirus people more so than almost anybody else. They do damage to other people. And so, but I want to have as an intellectual pursuit what I think are my best evidence that I can come up with as to what I think is true and not true. And I don't think that Christianity or Islam or Judaism or Hinduism or Shintoism make sense. They don't make sense to me. I'm on my soapbox. Okay. And I feel like I'm starting to ramble a little bit.
No,
Brenda, I don't want to do anything to make it sound like I'm trying to make Christianity make sense to you, because I don't think I can. But I do want to say why I think it makes sense to me. This is Max. Is this okay? This is not about the debate.
Yeah. No. Go ahead. Yeah, sure.
When I look around at the world around me, I think that a lot of it has gone to shit, and it's been going to shit since forever. And I think that the Jewish religion started out as an attempt that a group of people made in order they made this attempt to commune with a god. Um, and they thought maybe if we follow certain rules and we appease the gods and we do some things, we will make some kind of agreement with that deity, and we'll be on the same team because we followed its rules. And it turns out that doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't work because that God doesn't exist. Maybe it doesn't work because that's just not how that God works. I don't know. But that seems to be the attempt that was made. There was an historical person, Jesus. I don't know if you necessarily agree with.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. I think that atheists that deny, like Richard Carrier, that these people are deeply mistaken. I don't think they have good arguments. I think that definitely Jesus Christ existed as a human being. I don't think he was a god. And
Okay.
and as far as you're saying, yeah, I can understand that point of view. I can understand a sort of spiritual point of view that it seems to me like that's what you're saying. I don't have a problem with that. I don't even have a problem with people who are just strictly Christian or Muslim. It's when they start to get into my business that I have a problem.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I one of the reasons, Brenda, that I've actually spoken on these debates is because of you, because I've seen you show up on these things and be abused by people who are in my tribe, and it hurts me and it pisses me off. And I think that's bullshit. The people who wear a cross around their neck shouldn't be the kind of people who talk to people like you poorly. You don't deserve
Well,
that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I make a distinction between. I think that those people are assholes because they are assholes, not necessarily because they are religious, right? So they're good people who, in any religion, and I've personally witnessed in Islam, as also in Christianity, good people who do good things um, because they're motivated to do that. And I'm not sure that you can lay the. So the new atheist claim was that religion is intrinsically evil in its nature, and I don't think I agree with that. I think people bring bring their own issues into the religion, and some adhere some adherents to religion justify their already kind of well, let's just stick with asshole. Their asshole nature. They justify that. That's what they brought into the religion, is their own biases and prejudices. They brought that in, and they've justify it in their faith, and I don't think that that's legitimate, right? So I don't think that Christianity is false because there are assholes, and that's certainly true in Islam, right? We have people who are terrorists, but then the proprietors of the shop that's half a block away from me that I've been going for literally years now, they're fantastic people. I really respect them. I really do. And they're not assholes, you know? So you have to make these distinctions in my point of view. Yeah. So I appreciate, I'm talking too much. I feel like
It's fine, don't worry. I used to be one of those kind of hateful atheists, but then when we started here and the ethos of the channel is not that, and I started getting a lot more opinions, and I met people like Isa, people like Dr. J and Coffee Breath, and then I became a lot softer, and I think that we can have these conversations. It can even get heated. I sometimes, when I debate on the MDD Discord, I can get like feisty, but always respectful, always never insulting. I think that's the way to go about these things. And with that, we may not come to an agreement, but at least we can explore some conversations, maybe get some ideas, and it forces me to think a lot on uh, because people sometimes bring you reflections of your own beliefs that you haven't thought before, and that avenues that make you get obligate you to justify yourself in things in ways that you may not have thought about before, or express your ideas in a certain specific way. So I think all that is a fun exercise and kind of fun all around. And that's a little bit why I do it. But I used to be one of those like mean atheists, like math. But fortunately, it's changed. I enjoy the conversations much more. You can learn much more about people when you're chatting with them than when you're kind of picking a fight with them. And I
Yeah.
think that's quite valuable.
Unfortunately, there seems to be a dynamic on social media of the more extreme behavior, the more attention you get, and the more you're encouraged to become more and more extreme. And so we have these influence peddlers, people who go out into the world and take their camera with them, and then do really bizarre, if not dangerous, things out in public for social media attention. And that's really a problem. And I think that holding extreme views on social media just for attention, it's so counterproductive. It's bad, I think.
Isa, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, so to me, I respect religion and I respect theology, and I just find it, I'm kind of disappointed in people more than the theology itself. I think
Mm-hmm.
people are using the theology as a weapon, and I'm an aficionado of film, so I watch a lot of films, and I think of Stephen King. Stephen King is, I think, one of the most excellent horror writers in the genre, and he has a certain kind of tropes that he deals with, and I think they're kind of really powerful. He mostly deals with a lot of religious fanatics; those are his
Uh-huh.
antagonists, and he uses Maine usually as his like setting. Um, but the religious fanatic is usually the villain in all of his stories, and it makes sense because the fanaticism is the problem, and a fanatic of anything is a problem. You can be a fanatic of scientism, where people are like, I'm gonna, and there's some people who do that, where they're like, everything that has to be this logical, rational way, and I will hurt anybody, I will do anything to anyone because logic and rationality are more important. And there's this interesting show. I'm an aficionado of another YouTube channel called Renegade Cuts. I really like
Uh-huh.
Renegade Cut, and I would say he's probably pretty progressive, but he engages the show called Rick and Morty, and in this
Ooh.
show, people praise the character of Rick, and they're like, Rick is honest. But what Renegade Cut says in his critique is, he's like, no, he's cruel. And there's a difference. You can be cruel. You can be honest and kind, and you can be honest and cruel. And Rick is a cruel, bitter character. He's not a kind character. And that's unfortunate in our culture. We are attracted to these kind of, I would say, abhorrent characters. Like the president of the United States, if we had a president of the United States who said pretty abhorrent things, right? But people praise it. And they're like, this is great. We love this reality TV star thing. This is beautiful. This is good. And I'm like, to me, that's abhorrent behavior. And I've been in certain spaces, particularly religious spaces, where I've heard people say abhorrent, disgusting, grotesque things. But then they say, well, because I'm such a bigot, that makes me better than other people. I'm the most profound bigot. I can say nasty things about other people. Using an Islamic framework, people say, well, you're a kafir. A kafir in Arabic means one who covers over the truth. That's literally what it means. But people say it means infidel and disbeliever, but that's not what it means in Arabic. It means one, so it's a person who deliberately knows what's right, but is obfuscating what is true because maybe they benefit from it. That is actually what a kafir means in Islamic theology. But I see these very abhorrent behavior where people are like, and I've discussed with them, and I said, well, I think we should accept any. And I actually had a conversation about gender today, funny enough. And the person's like, well, what do you think about furries? And what do you think about these things? And I'm like, people identify however they want to identify. Can you just leave people alone? No, I need to condemn them. I need to say how horrible they are. Well, what about if a person says, I'm Mr. Miss X? I'm like, I'm going to call them that because that's respectful. That's what the person wants to be called. Can you leave it alone? No, I need to their goal is I have to disrespect people. I have to be mean. I have to be nasty. And that makes me look good. Being nasty and mean to other people makes me look good. And when I see that, I mean, it makes me sick. And I'm like, this is what your theology is? I'm going to hurt other people to make myself look good? You just sound like a bully. That's it.
You're different. That's bad.
Exactly. And it bothers me. Like when I saw when I posted in this, I was in a Muslim Discord and I was posting some ideas and they were flipping out. I said, oh yeah, I think these other religions are cool. No. How dare you say Buddhism has value?
It gets a little heated when people say, "Oh no, my religion tells me that your life experiences are invalid." You say, "Well, why? Why would you think that?" It's like we can all live and coexist without you just having to legislate other people's lives and telling that they don't have value. It makes no sense. I can accept that you believe in whatever you want, but why? What's the need for judgment where it doesn't really concern you? And the fairy thing, like people are so vicious about fairies. I don't get it. I don't get it. It's like, well, I wouldn't. It's not something for me. But if you like to put on a fairy costume, that's fine. Like it makes no difference to me whatsoever. But people hate the fairies, and on the MDD Discord, we get a lot of that, and people will come back at someone making an argument and say, "Oh, it doesn't matter because you're a fairy." It's like, what?
So I was at the gym the other day, and there's a guy walking around just whistling, and it annoyed the living hell out of me. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing walking around here fucking whistling? What's wrong with you? And it was making me so annoyed. And I started to think about myself. I'm like, why does it bother you so much that this guy is just walking around happy and whistling? And I don't know if it's correct, but I think what really bothered me about that was that he had some kind of freedom that I've never had, where he could just give a shit and just walk around and whistle and be happy. And I'm like, why do you get to be happy and I'm not happy? I'm sitting in here in the gym hating myself, and you're walking around happy and whistling. Why do you get that and I don't? And I wonder if maybe there's a little bit of that with like this hatred of furries or othering of other people. It's like, why do you get to be the thing you want to be? I don't.
That's a very interesting thought, because everyone has something that they like that it's maybe a little bit out of the norm, or I don't know. It's just a kink. I don't see it as inherently bad, but people see it as either really weird or really evil, or they start with the insults like this is stupid, this is deranged, or whatever. It's like, well, it's a game. I don't know. It's a
Well, and the other thing is I spend so much of my life like trying to pull away and like not get in the way of other people. Like if I'm in the grocery store and I'm in front of the chicken wings and like somebody else is in the aisle, like, fuck, I gotta get out of here because I'm in their way. They probably need chicken wings and they deserve chicken wings more than I do. I gotta get out of here. I spend so much of my life like shrinking and becoming smaller so that I'm not getting in other people's way. And then when someone comes out and they're just loud and big and doing whatever they want, I'm like, why do you get to not shrink? Why do I have to spend my whole life becoming smaller and you just walk around huge? And maybe my experience is is shared by a lot of other people, but it just comes out in a different way. I don't know.
I think it's fair. And do you mind if I piggyback off of that? I think there's also people have this aversion to things they don't understand or know.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, there are Muslim furries. I have he's like a best buddy. I brought him to MDD, and he is a Muslim furry, and he identifies as both, and that's fine. But some people are like, well, he's not really Muslim because he's a furry, or he doesn't have the right theology. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Then you're not the judge, jury, and executioner. And when you take that position of trying to say, well, they're not the real Muslim, I said, well, you do realize that you face that same scrutiny. Someone else is going to say you're not the real Muslim. So it's disgusting, mean, and gross. But I think there's this thing, they have this like icky thing. They're like, oh, gay people are icky, trans people are icky. It's just so weird and gross. And I'm like, yeah, well, if you were in a reality where everybody was trans or everybody was, a part of the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, you would be icky. So it's like, you just happen to be in the majority. So it's like, that's the thing. There's actually a really kind of horrific movie. It's called Boys Don't Cry with Hilary Swank. And it's very troubling to me, because that's how people are. They're like, oh, this person is different, so I can abuse them. I can hurt them. I can assault them. Everything is free reign. And it's very troubling. It's extremely troubling to me when people take this identity. And I'm like, and then they come off as hypocrites, because when their community is marginalized, they're like, oh, I'm marginalized, I'm suffering. And I'm like, you're a charlatan, you're a grifter, you're a hypocrite, because you don't actually care about marginalized people. You just care about your identity when you're hurt. And I don't know that as a person who does social work and is in activism, I care about all peoples who are marginalized. That is so important to me. And I believe we need to be consistent in that. And that's the way we have liberation. But if you're just saying, I want to be liberated for myself, I'm just like, you're selfish. Because if you had the privilege, you would be okay with everyone being oppressed if you're not oppressed. So
right.
I don't buy it. I don't believe it.
Yeah, with me, the thing that gets me is when people tell me, oh, no, it's because I care about them that I want them to be trans or gay or whatever. It's like, well, they're fine. If you leave them alone, they will be just fine. So I don't see what the problem is there. And the other thing I was thinking just now is that, for example, in this panel, we have 4 people all with very different backgrounds. And we could all get into a debate, into like an actual debate on the positions of why we believe the stuff that we believe. And we can get into the weeds of it and go discuss all the details. So go basically do the same thing that we saw just now. But then we can just go back to enjoying each other's companies and agreeing and wishing the other well and treating us with respect and with dignity. And I think that's a very powerful thing. I think that that's a better way to go than fostering a divide in people. And we may not come to an agreement, or we might not change each other's minds, but at least we can respect enough of each other to have the conversation. And then when the conversation about that specific thing is over, even though it might get, sometimes it gets a little bit a little bit higher tones, but always within certain boundaries and with respect, with acknowledgement of each other and listening. I think that's awesome. I think that's what we should be aiming for in the world that we have today, because I don't think that Coffee Breath said earlier that sometimes the world is kind of going to shit. I think it's in some aspects, because even though things have always been bad for some people, it has gotten better. So we just need to keep at it and putting in the work. And a lot of these conversations sometimes put in that work to convince people of maybe being kind, or maybe just helping someone that's close to you. And that's a one step. And then you keep on taking steps and making the world a better place. Just if you do your part, then it's a little less worse for someone or something, or someone like near around you, and little by little we can make it bigger. I'm sorry, I rambled. Who wants to jump in?
I think
Um,
you have a lot to say there, Max. I agree with a ton of what you said. I think that there's a huge need for people to see what other people really are, and I think that a lot of the the destructive side of these kinds of discussions comes from that othering. When we look at another person and we say, "You're different from me," and that's not okay. It turns into a dehumanization of other people. I mean, that's okay if the other person is Muslim like Isa and they're just a terrorist. And we're allowed to hate them.
Hmm.
If we didn't have Arabic Islamic culture, we wouldn't have baklava
It wouldn't have zero.
Yes,
Or-
and
biryani.
distillation.
or biryani,
And
right?
probably even Greek philosophy, like it got
Yes.
translated through, Islamic sciences, and
And they kept the works for us. A lot of what we see now from the Greeks was kept by the Muslims, and
the mathematics, Al-Khwarizmi. Like it's just, this is a globalization where impacted and affected, and we work together as humanity. So
yeah.
we also wouldn't have 1001 Arabian Nights. That's a plug for Wednesday.
Yeah. Yes.
Tell me that story. Come listen to it. Tell me that story.
Yes, we're finishing up the 1001 Arabian Night stories that we started a couple of weeks back, and those are. But every culture has something that they have. Oh, Maximiliano Vision says both ISA 2024, 28, 32, 36, and 40.
I'm actually running. I'm going to be running in my city of Philadelphia soon. I'm going through. I'm going to be doing an MSWJD, and then I'm planning to run for office. I'm probably going to start with the Board of Education, because the only way we can change things is to change our laws.
All politics are local.
That's it. I believe in the local politics, and we got to do it. We got to get on the board.
That's pretty awesome. That is awesome. Yeah.
Well, and this is not related to anything, but one of the things that I think is really fascinating about the story of Jesus is that ultimately that guy got killed because, I think, he walked into a temple where a bunch of people were using religion to make money, and he was like, "This is spiritually bankrupt. What the hell is wrong with you people?" And he started like kicking things over and being like, "This is not what this is all about." And he walked into this religious space and said, "You guys are abusing religion for your own personal gain, and that's fucking wrong." And then they killed him for it. And now there's a whole group of Christians out there who are using Christianity to abuse other people for their own personal. I'm like, God, that's like exactly opposite of what this was all about.
I 100% agree with you. And that's actually, it's total grifting. These folks are grifting.
They don't believe. We've seen time after time that these TV evangelists don't even believe the religion that they profess to believe. I mean, they don't. They're in the back room doing lines of coke off a gay hooker's ass. I mean, I'm literally.
That's literally what I was thinking about. Haggart is exactly.
That's not even an exaggeration. That's exactly what he did.
That's what he did.
Yeah.
Robert Tilton, and yeah.
And then you had Popoff, who was doing the fake clairvoyancy. I'm a big fan of what James Randi did. James Randi really.
Oh yeah.
Because it's grifting and it's charlatanry. There was this person who was a predator too, who was like a so-called karate master who did like this kind of blowing thing, and he caught him, and his whole thing was exposed. And then it was also exposed that he was abusing children through his kind of parlor tricks, he got people to come to his karate studio, and yeah. So
Well, and then you have
Robin sent
organizations like, oh, go ahead.
Robin sent us one membership and went to Shifty Eyes Shady, who also sell to ISA local politics a lot more manageable and realistic to control than state or national.
I agree.
So everyone congratulated you, Isa. So we're hoping you do really well. I think you will be a source for good and change. And
we need it. We that's like one thing that I actually want to fight against that I think is really disgusting. And people don't really think about it, but it's the parking authority. The parking authority is one of the most awful, villainous spaces because what it does, particularly in Philadelphia, is extremely efficient, and they keep ticketing people. Like, let's say someone's at a sign and maybe they're in a wrong kind of space. They will tow cars immediately. They will put tickets quickly. And for someone who has privilege and has resources, it's an annoyance. And it's awful, and you're like, dude, I don't want to pay $50 for this thing. But for someone who's impoverished and doesn't have, you nuke someone's life. You tow that person's car. They can't afford to pay that bill. They can't go to work. Their whole life is now ruined. And I'm like, this is completely incorrect. And it's also very inefficient if you want to appeal the case. It's very efficient for them to write you up the ticket. But if you're saying, hey, I don't agree with this, it's very inefficient. Then you come into the case and they're like, well, we have a picture. It doesn't matter. We're making you pay. So I'm like, you can't even really appeal it. So it's like it's this tricky system that it's a systematic form of oppression on its citizens. And do these tickets money even benefit the society? No. It just benefits rich people's pockets. So
it's bringing in revenue, though, you're going to have you're going to get pushback because that department brings in revenue
for themselves. It doesn't actually bring revenue in for the city.
It doesn't?
No. They're privatized. They're actually a privatized company. These parking, a lot of these things are privatized. Prisons are privatized.
I didn't realize that. Wow.
Capitalism does a lot of evil. I'm going to be very honest from the get-go, particularly in the United States. It does a lot of evil where they privatize prisons. They throw people who are disenfranchised. Who are most of the people in prisons, by the way? They're people of color and people who are in poverty. That's who it is. There's like, oh, there's a lot of white people. Yeah. You know who all these white people are? They're all poor white people who can't defend themselves because they can't get fair, adequate representation. So it's a bunch of poor people and people of color who are thrown in jails. The rich people escape because they have money. They'll pay the lawyer and they can just get off the case. They get off the beat. So it's like we have a very rigged system that disenfranchises and disempowers people continuously and constantly. And you were brought up about being trans. That's another horrible thing that happens. People get thrown out on the streets and they become unhoused. And what recourse do they have? They don't have a recourse because like the society doesn't protect them. And for a long time, someone says, hey, I'm trans. They're going to be like, no, I'm not even going to hire you in my job. Well, then how do I survive in society? I don't have any protections. So
yeah, I had a lot of that was one of the things that you know, I had a lot of help from the nonprofit organizations. That's what I was kind of saying before, and those are basically church-based, right? And the social workers that were not members of the church or anything, but you know, the social workers helped me a lot, right? Yeah, I saw a lot of stuff, right?
Well, and I think that's the story that goes untold, is that for every, you know, televangelist storing coke off a hooker's ass, there's 1,000 social workers who go to church every Sunday and are out there helping homeless people, and they never get noticed.
Totally agree with you about that. They're underserved. I pride myself being able to debate people, but if you put a bunch of papers from the bureaucratic department of the city, and my brain goes blank. I mean, I just like, what is this? And then they can say, well, you have to sign here, check this. I'm going, fuck, just show me where to sign because I don't understand any of this.
it gets the bureaucracy sometimes gets hard, but it's always nice to see. The only thing when I see some of these church groups that they will kind of hold the help hostage of trying to get you into their belief. That I kind of don't agree, but I do acknowledge that church do a
Yeah,
lot and they do food drives.
yeah, they have a financial incentive because they get public monies from the number of people that they service.
Mhm.
But
You know
at
what?
least in my experience, they
In
do
what
it.
way? I didn't catch that.
Just if you're a client of a particular non-governmental organization, you know, they get. I'm sure that they must get. I actually don't know. I assume that they get paid by the number of clients that they have. I guess I don't actually know, but I think they do.
I wanted to just chip in one quick thing here. I was looking at the comments about socialism. There was a critique against socialism. First of all, I was critiquing capitalism. I didn't even bring up socialism, which I think is not fair because it was like a deflection. They're like, because I'm critiquing capitalism, thus I must be promoting socialism. I didn't even do that. So that's not even a fair, accurate representation of what I was doing. But the thing is, and it's like people want to defend capitalism because it's a religion. People worship capitalism. And you'll notice that a lot of these right-wing fanatical Christians also tie in capitalism and say, well, capitalism is this beautiful system that's great. And I'm like, it's great for you because you have privileges. For people who don't have those privileges, it's not great for them. And that's the thing, because they're living in privilege. They have their big mansions. They have their pensions. They have boku bucks. So it's great for them. But for people who are in poverty, it's not great. And
And a lot of those people, Isa, aren't in riches yet. But they believe that they can get there.
that's it. It's
Yeah,
a religion of it's a prosperity gospel. People
Yeah,
believe
so-
in this prosperity gospel.
Yeah, that's just heresy as far as I'm concerned. They should be burned at the stake. No, but as far as I'm concerned, America has a long way to go before they get even close to socialism. I mean, America is pretty conservative. There's a lot of room within capitalist economies for America to improve. We can go quite a ways before we get even close to being kind of socialistic. So I think, there's people that used to say, for instance, like Social Security and Medicare are socialism, and Ronald Reagan had ads against it, saying it's infringing, it's going to take us into socialism and communism, and that's just ridiculous, right? There's a big divide between having health care and being communist. There's just a huge difference there, and I don't think that we're in danger. The United States is not in danger of becoming socialist in any way. We should have more progressive, in my opinion. I'm a Democrat, so I would be in favor of more progressive legislation, and that means we should spend money to take care of people who are disadvantaged, who are down and out, and things like that. That's not socialism. That's within capitalism.
And I hear you. And one of the things is what we are calling socialism is not even real socialism. Like the things when we think of Russia, USSR, and we think about China, these are oligarchies. This is not communist. This is not socialist. They're not socialist countries. Vietnam, these are all oligarchies where a few rich people run everything and control all the money and all the power. So it's not socialism. It's all the people are equally poor and suffering. That's what it is, but it's not actual socialism. So, yeah.
Isa or Max, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Max says, "See, vote Isa." Sorry, I had to leave there for a second. Had to go to the toilet.
You got my vote. I'll vote early and often.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm on your team, Isa.
Thank you. And the whole point to me is, I believe I understand making sure of like you have incentive programs where people can get resources and stuff, but I think we should have things like universal basic income. We should have all Maslow's hierarchy of needs met, at least most of these met. You need to have like your safety, your being housed, food, all of this stuff should be sorted. have the resources in the world to do this,
Mhm.
but people are hoarding it. There are certain people who are hoarding everything for themselves. They have billions and trillions of dollars and they're hoarding it for themselves. And I'm like, so it's okay if you hoard these trillions of dollars and let everyone else suffer. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Um,
Max,
n-
what's your perspective from Uruguay?
uh,
I don't know what the economy in Uruguay is compared to the economy in America.
it's hard here because we're still a third world country, and I have a show planned for this Sunday about Uruguay, but I can give you a sneak peek on a few of the things I'm going to say. Uh, we have, for example, a 50% tax on technology. So that's preventing us on some point modernizing us. And even though uh, software, for example, both people who do software and software as a service from here, that is something that is getting really big. But we have a 50% tax on technology, and that makes any kind of technology venture very difficult in this country.
Well,
So
what does
even
that
though,
mean? What does that mean? 50, a tax on technology? Meaning that
so
means a sales tax? Is that what you mean?
no, it's an import tax. So let's say you want to sell computers, and in the US or in the provider somewhere in the world, they cost $1,000. Just for bringing them here, the state charges you 50% tax on that. So the computer costs $1,500, right? But the problem is that people's average salary is in pesos, and in pesos it's I don't remember. Let me look it up because I don't remember from memory. But in the problem with the exchange rate is that those things become really really expensive. So at some point that is holding our country. That being said, politically here we are very progressive. We're almost like 50-50 atheists and Christians. And I mean, let's say 45-45, something like that. We have a lot of progressive policies, but we still have a lot to go, and it's still a third world country. So, in that sense, we have the advantage that religion doesn't hold us back because we have been able to implement same-sex marriage laws and abortion laws and legal marijuana and a bunch of other stuff. But we still have, a bunch of things to fix. But we're not that bad. Compared to our neighbors, for example, Argentina is going through a crisis. Brazil has always been a little bit of a mess. It's hard out here in South America, but I'm really lucky enough in that I started learning English very young. So I've been working for a U.S. company for the last 15 years. It's going to be 16 on May 1st. But most people don't get that, and I get the luxury of living alone, and I've dated a couple of ladies that they can't afford to live alone, and they're 35 like me. It gets it gets complicated. Max
But what
says,
about Carnival?
oh yeah, Carnaval. That is the longest Carnaval in the world. Lasts 50 days. And when stuff is complicated, you party a lot, and it's all better. That's our philosophy. And Max says, "You're always a beacon of light to us. Thank you so much." He's from Argentina, right next door. So he knows like the plight. And Argentina is such a beautiful country. It's so beautiful. It's so big. It has so many things, but it has always been plagued by corruption and people taking advantage. People in power taking advantage. You know. So it's really sad what happens in Argentina. But they could be like a world superpower, but it's so messed up what goes on there.
You should come over to Ohio sometime, Max. It's one enormous strip mall.
What says Elon sends his regards to Brazil? Yeah, I heard a little bit about Elon's problems with the Brazil legal system. What do you mean a large shopping mall? It's the old city or?
Basically, the entire state of Ohio is a parking lot with a one-story shopping mall on it, and then there's like some cornfields around it. That's the whole state.
Oh, we have a lot of cows here. There's 4 cows per every inhabitant. That is a lot because we're 3.5 million people. But the thing is that out of 3.5 million people, half of us live in the capital city. So we're starting to get some big city problems, even though it's not really that big of a city.
There's 3.5 million people in Uruguay.
Yes.
No,
Yes, it's nothing.
really?
Yeah.
That's a city.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a Minneapolis St. Paul metropolitan area is about that size.
Yeah, that's a small city.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the size of the country is also the size of a state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Net2User says, we are like you, I think. France, 41% of the population in France identified as Roman Catholic, 40 as unaffiliated, including atheists and agnostics, and the rest follow other religions. Yeah, it's roughly that. Here it's more like 45, and then the rest that are non-denominational. And Max says, try Uruguayan beef if you can. Yes, that is a delicacy. It's something really good. Canada is only 30 million people. Oh my God. I get anxiety just hearing that about that many people. That must. The US seems to me like everywhere would be crowded and people all over. I get that.
It's
A little
not.
bit like, oh,
So
that,
Well,
bad.
that's my,
I had that feeling. I traveled to California a few years back for a friend's birthday. Um, Minnesota, there was a sort of a difference. You could just kind of feel the population is very high on the West Coast, the number of people that are always
Uh-huh.
around you. And it felt different than Minnesota's a little bit, is not as population dense. I don't know how I felt it, but it just felt like there was more people. And I don't know how I knew that, but maybe it's just because they were just always around. And it's not quite the same here. It's not quite as dense here, but I imagine we'll get there eventually. But for this time being, Minnesota is not as dense as the West, as either coast, I would imagine. But
uh-huh.
there is kind of a feeling that you get when you're in a very large metropolitan area that's a lot different. And then, of course,
Right.
there was the sites which were fucking amazing because we went to the Castro district
Uh-huh.
during Halloween. And the Castro district, that's the gay area in San Francisco. And that was like an experience. You haven't
yeah.
lived until you've seen somebody walk down the street in 6-inch pumps and fishnet stockings and a thong. And that's it.
That sounds. I've
That's
DJed.
burned. That's burned into my retina. It was just nobody cared either. It was just, oh, okay, yeah, holy shit.
I've DJed at gay clubs and they have been a lot of fun. To be honest, to be completely
Oh
honest.
yeah, this just was a little
They
bit
love
different. In
dancing.
Minnesota, you don't do that. I don't care. But still.
Ashton says that for 30 million people in Canada, it's nobody. The country is literally almost undeveloped land. Yeah, I can imagine. It goes from like this, from coast to coast. That must be something to see.
Because it's
So-
cold. I'm in Minnesota. They're colder than us. We're in Minnesota. We're cold.
Right.
And they're even more cold. It's
I
cold
think-
as hell.
I think I read somewhere that like 90% of Canadians live within 100 miles of the U.S. border. I don't know if that's actually the correct statistic, but it's something crazy like that.
Yeah, I'm sure
Alright.
most of them live either on the coast or close to, like near Toronto and close to the major northeast states of the United States and stuff.
Yeah, close to the U.S. border because it's furthest south.
All right, so we're going to go around and give our final thoughts, and we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Let's start with Brenda.
Yeah, so my final thoughts are I appreciate the community, and I enjoy the opportunity to exercise my critical thinking skills, and it doesn't mean that I dislike. Well, there's certain people I don't like, but most people I do, and I try to be respectful if people are respectful. If not, then I sometimes lose my shit, but I try not to do that.
Thank you very much. Coffee Bread?
My final thoughts are, Brenda, I love you and I appreciate you and I affirm you.
All right, thank you very much. Isa?
I'm sorry we didn't get to talk too much about the debate, but like in my final thoughts, I think I really like what our conversation was here more than I liked the conversation there. I think we have, folks who are atheists and theists on the panel, and I think we can have a more healthier, deeper dialogue because what we really talked about was personal perspectives. And I think that that's the most salient and important thing, more important than just talking points. I think that that's the loss of being stuck in talking points, shooting out generic talking points that are basically platitudes and aren't real. So I really appreciated that we had a dialogue that was real and authentic.
Yeah, it was. It's pretty awesome. I really enjoy talking with every one of you. It's always super fun and insightful. I always take something from the stuff that you say, and I think that today we saw a classic debate, atheist theist, and we all were like, yeah, we've seen this a million times. Let's talk about other stuff. And I think that's also valuable. That was pretty cool.
Somebody in the chat says, I don't know how people can live in the snow. I'm from Minnesota, so I love the snow, and I kind of miss it because of global warming. We're not having the winters that we used to have. But cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, snowmobile, riding on snowmobiles,
Sounds fun.
ice fishing. These are all activities that I've done and that I really, really enjoyed. So you adapt to it and you make precautions in the past. So if you go cross country skiing, which I really enjoyed, you dress for it, right?
Right.
You learn how to dress for it, or else Mother Nature teaches you made a mistake, right? She's pretty strict on that, the way you do it is you dress in layers, and you take some schnapps with you to warm things up, and then you head out and you make sure that your skis are well waxed, and you go out and it's a great time, and so I'm just going to put in a plug here for winter activities are great. Garrison Keillor had a saying, and here in Minnesota, Mother Nature is actively trying to kill you.
Yeah, like Australia.
So you have to learn from that, and that's true. It seems less true now because we don't seem to have the winters that we used to have. I suppose there's less than that.
I get a couple of questions. Does it snow a lot in Uruguay? And I would think the mountains of Uruguay got snow. No, it doesn't snow here. I haven't seen the snow, and we don't have mountains. Our highest sort of mount, it's like a hill, and it's 500 meters. We don't get mountains at all. We're kind of coastal and grassland. And forest maybe a little bit, but yeah, it's kind of boring weather-wise. But I don't know.
The Pampas is what it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, something similar. Yeah, grassland. Yes. Pampa it's a type of field, but it's also a place in Argentina. So we call it grasslands. It's a bit more accurate for us. In Argentina, it's a little bit more. It's a bit different, but yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us for the after show today. Short and sweet. I'm sorry, I'm very tired. I started teaching today, so we are going to wrap it up. And I enjoyed the conversation thoroughly. It's always a pleasure when you three come on. And we've made a nice community of panelists that support the show, and it's always fun to get into conversations and stuff. And we all kind of know each other. So
I got a question, Max.
yes,
So
go ahead.
last time I was on, something was mentioned about me debating Flatzoid. Are you aware of anything that's developed since then?
No, but I will ask Ghost. He's the one that is in contact with Flatzo, but we can try to set that up here so everyone feels comfortable. Yeah, sure. Thank you for reminding me. I'll ask us.
I don't know if he would accept my emails or probably not. So if
Yep, sure.
I just need to know. And I don't know if you have my email. You can always email me.
I have your Discord, and if I need your email, we can ask you. I can ask you over there, so no problem. Thank you for reminding me. I'll make sure to ask us, and we can try to get that set up. So with that, we're going to be on our way. Thank you everyone for being here. Remember to like, share, subscribe, do the whole internet thing. It supports the show massively, and to our panelists, our audience. We love you very much, and we enjoy doing this for both me and us. So until next time, tomorrow, Mark Reed debates. I didn't have it ready, damn it. 1 second, let me confirm who they are debating. It's
Max, real quick, 1 second. I just wanted to say to Isa, because I don't. Thank you for showing the painting that you bought. I was trying to say thank you when you were talking, but I didn't realize that I was muted. So I looked at it the other day. I was like, oh, I was muted the whole time. Like I looked like such a jerk. So thank you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, definitely.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank you, Lisa.
Some other time too.
All right. Yeah, we can definitely get that done. I remember that there was one show where I wasn't hosting. I think Oz was hosting still. That I kept asking you over the internal chat if you had a link that we could share and stuff. But you were kind of really busy painting and chatting with us, and you never saw it. But yeah, it's awesome. We can always share that the audience just at least to take a look at and give feedback. That's always, you don't have to buy. Just saying, hey, I like this is always a good thing for any kind of artist and
for sure.
or someone who does a thing. It's always good to get some feedback. So the debate tomorrow is Mark Reed and Dusty versus Muslim apologist and Hussein on Is Islam True? So we might have a continuation of this sort of type of after show. So tomorrow, the debate is at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we will have a pre-show and an after show like we usually do. Thank you, everyone, for being there. And we'll catch you tomorrow.